Can I help you?
It's funny. Anyways, today we have a DAC from a very interesting company,
RME.
RME. Now, RME is a company that I am very, very, very familiar with.
How so?
Well, you see, RME is a company that has a pro background, right? So they make pro audio stuff. And when I used to like work in studios, I saw RME in so many places. I thought it was like a cheap.
Cheap. Oh, yeah, cheap.
Turns out not these companies, these studios were loaded. So good to know.
They
Good
got
to
the
know.
good stuff.
You know, maybe I should have taken one. But anyways, the RME company comes from a pro audio background, and they actually made a audiophile DAC not too long ago.
Not just the DAC though.
Oh God, it's not just a DAC. It has a preamp functionality.
It's a headphone amp.
It's a headphone amp. It has a lot of functions. I mean, more than we're gonna go over in this video. Because in this video, I'm going to, and we're going to, show you the functionalities we used and kind of, the stuff we would use, right? But I mean, if you start playing around with it and have this DAC for a long time in your system, I mean, there's just a lot.
This is like the tinkerer's paradise right here. Like this box has
like
so
this
much.
entire video could be like literally 30 minutes long, just going over the features. So we're not gonna do that.
Yep.
Instead, we're gonna talk about how does it sound, because it has a lot of features. Also $3,000.
Yeah, roughly.
So how does it sound, right? Today the model, by the way, is the ADI-2-PRO-FS-R Black Edition.
It's their anniversary.
Try saying that a dozen times. So, I mean, how does it sound? Does the Black Edition sound blacker? Does it have a blacker background?
We'll find out. Compared to the ADI-2 that I reviewed way back, it feels like years ago.
Yeah, this is more like the better version of that, right?
Yeah, this is the upper model of this with more inputs,
more features,
which is crazy because the ADI-2 had so many features. Like it had a manual that just went over everything.
Yeah,
that you can
but I think what's important to me, right, is I do appreciate more features. Don't get me wrong, but does it sound better? Right?
You're
Does
such an
does it
audiophile.
sound $3,000?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Let's find out.
Let's go. Okay, so to test out the RME, we're gonna be using my Inuus Zen Mini Mark III streamer. It's also a DAC, but I'm just going to be using the streamer function. And then outputting it to one of the DACs here, including the RME. And for the RME, we're also using its preamp capability because it's also a preamplifier. And feeding it straight to my NAD C298 amplifier. And then it's going to be feeding it to my Tecton speakers, the Troubadour speakers. So that's gonna be the main test rig here. And then of course, we're gonna be using the May DAC as a comparison, which is a more expensive DAC. But so this is the May DAC. And then this is the power supply for the May DAC. And then this is the Serene preamplifier that we will be using because the May DAC doesn't have a preamplifier capability. So here we're talking about like what, 7-8 grand versus a $3,000 DAC / preamplifier. So that's gonna be a pretty big, comparison right there. And then if we have time, we're gonna be comparing it to a $740 USD DAC from China, SMSL VMV 1DSE. Try saying that a dozen times. So yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing with Tujin, and we'll also test out the headphone capability on this as well, feeding it to from the Inuus as well, using Rune for the entire thing. So I think it was very good. The ADI-2-PRO sounds really good. Now, is it $3,000 good? Yes, I think so. Now, that's kind of putting aside the feature portion of it, really. The sound quality itself is despite the small box, it is what I would hear from a around $3,000 point priced DAC. And for those of you that, see, this is the thing, Kyujin. Like, sometimes people, like, say they don't hear difference with DACs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I hear between the May DAC and the ADI-2-PRO, I hear a distinctive difference. Like, it wasn't even, like, I didn't have to hear it, like, for hours or, really have focused listen.
Like analyze.
Like, I didn't need to do that. I just, like, instant. And the main difference there was that the ADI-2-PRO had more bass emphasis, was more fuller in the bass region, and the high frequency was a little bit more detailed. Now, with the May DAC, however, I get more smooth response. I personally find it more musical, it's more mid-centric. The mid-range is done really well, the tonality is really good, and that's expected. The May DAC is a more expensive DAC. So if I had to choose one or the other, of course I would choose the May on personal level, but of course there's a price difference there. And for the $3,000 you pay for the ADI-2-PRO, one of the settings that I really, really liked was the loudness setting. And the loudness setting is something I personally think I can use in my system all the time. And what that is something very unique. You know how some speakers at low level listening just doesn't do it for you because there's not enough bass, there's not enough treble clarity. Well, what this loudness setting does is it allows you to set the bass and treble at a point where you want it to be at a lower level, and then as you increase the volume, the bass and treble elevation drops. So it's like a tone control only for low volume listening. So that's really cool because then we don't have to go and change the tone control every single time you're listening at low volume. You can just have it set, and it will be a consistent sound quality all throughout the volume range you listen at. So that to me is something I would personally use and find it very, very, very beneficial. Now, I think the soundstage and the focus is really good, but that'll come along more as I listen more. So we'll leave that for the final thoughts. So we're still listening now, and Kyujin is absolutely in love with the RME DAC. So let's see what he has to say. So Kyujin.
Okay. So you say that I'm in love with the DAC, but let me make this clear. In this setup, these Tectons with the amplifier and everything, they benefit with the sound characteristics or the qualities from the RME compared to the Kitsune, in my opinion. The extra detail and the slight emphasis and bass, to me, just makes this system just that much better. I find that these are already very like mid-range centric speakers. So with the Kitsune, it's just like, okay, I'm getting more of that. But do I really want more mid-range? Like, seriously, when we were listening to just like vocals, like, music with just straight vocals, it almost came off a bit too much for my tastes. And I have to admit, I do appreciate. I like bass.
But you make it sound like the Kitsune made the mid more forward sounding, but it's not like that.
It's like a little bit too warm, like way too like.
Too warm for your liking.
Yeah, too warm for my liking, and that's rare. I normally complain about systems sounding too V-shaped.
You know what I think? I think warm is no longer for you. I think your taste has changed a little bit ever since you started listening to more stuff in the studio and stuff.
I don't know about that.
I'm pretty certain.
I'll never admit to that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, but which one would you pick for yourself though?
Honestly, the feature-rich usefulness of the RME, it's almost like a tool, and it's no secret that I had the RME ADI-2, and I thought that was just fantastic for desktop use.
Yeah.
But in a 2-channel listening environment, I can't lie to myself. I would probably get the Hollow Audio, the Hollow May.
That's if you have that kind of big money to spend.
Yeah, if I had that cap roll, but I kind of spent that on an amplifier at the moment. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
So yeah, we just tried the headphone outputs, and it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool because you can control 2 headphones at once. There's 2 independent volume controls, and you can adjust the bass and treble independently for each headphone, or both at the same time. So if my ears bleed, Jay's ears bleed.
Well, no, you can control the volume for each headphone.
And both at the same time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but why would my ears bleed if you're?
I mean, so if I take control of both volumes,
What he just said there is confusing. You can change the volume per input for your headphones, or output, I should say.
or control all the outputs at the same time.
Yeah, and then also you can get tone control, so you can increase the bass, which is actually pretty tasteful bass. I liked it with the bass on neutral setting, but you know what? It was pretty good all around. Very clean sounding, very neutral. No really coloration that I can find unpleasant. It's detailed, but I don't think it's bright. Yeah, and with both headphones, I was quite impressed.
Yeah, it was very clean, and the power is really smart where both of these headphones are running at low gain. And as these headphones get more demanding, when you start increasing the volume, it'll switch to high gain. It's smart that way. And what's really nice is that because we're listening to the same tracks at the same time, and we're volume matching these headphones by ear, we can see how much more power hungry one headphone is to the other. Like for example, this headphone was at negative 8.5, and then this headphone was at negative 37.5. And the big difference between these 2 headphones is one's a planar that's a bit more power hungry, and the other one is, I believe, is dynamic.
Yeah, so you can adjust volume per output. That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, but it's cool
But
to see the
you know what?
difference.
The next step for RME, I'll tell you this. Please allow it to play different music on different outputs so that I don't have to listen to his trash music.
We were actually listening to your trash music.
Okay, so the headphones that we used to test the RME is actually the Sigva headphones, which I think is really nice for the price. I love the wood grain look, and both of these sound really good. I like this one for the detailed presentation and a little bit of that micro detail going on, but this one actually has more scale and bigger like sound stage and just overall bass extension. And these both come in pretty affordable price point. And yeah, what did you think?
You know what? More than the sound, it was the build and the comfort that really surprised me. They're very lightweight and they look great.
Yeah, and then the RME obviously powered these effortlessly and sounded incredible with it. So yeah. So the results are in.
And it's pretty cool.
Is it?
Yes, because at least for me personally, the SMSL BMB DE1SE.
D1SE.
Okay, D1SE. Was a really good underdog. Like, it's surprising how much performance you can get for the money.
Yeah.
However, that as a preamp and DAC,
By the way, we actually heard the D1SE like at the end in comparison to the RME and the May. So we did have some time left over. So we really didn't, but we wanted to try.
yeah. As a pure DAC, I think it's probably my favorite
Okay.
out of all 3. But when using it as a preamp, there's audible noise floor. It's just not on the same level as, the Kitsune stack or even the RME ADI-2-PRO.
So just to butt in there, I've been saying in the past, thousands of reviews I did for Chinese, I didn't do thousands, but just over exaggeration there. I've been saying that the DACs that are coming out from China that has preamplifier capabilities, the preamp is not very good. It's quite frankly shit.
Yeah.
So I really don't like it. But this one is actually on the better side, but you still like audibly hear the noise.
Yeah,
noise
as
floor.
soon as you start cranking up, you're like, wait, what is that I'm hearing? That's noise floor.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. So if you get this stack, you would need to complement with a good preamplifier if you want the best performance.
But then when we get to the RME ADI-2-PRO, the biggest thing I noticed was the bass. More of like the background details with like instruments in the background. The bass is very tactile and present, while the Hollow May, it's more on the mid-range and just sounding very smooth. Like if you want a smooth sound, no competition, you go for the May.
By the way, to butt in there again, we were listening to non-oversampling mode, NOS, on the Hollow May. So if you're upsampling with, a HQ player or whatever, or internally even, then the results may vary.
Yeah. And I think the coolest thing with the RME hands down, is the loudness function.
Yes.
Because when we first listened to it, the loudness function was on.
Yeah.
And it was so noticeable. I was like, whoa, like, did these speakers still have that kind of bass going on? Like, I was like, what, Jay? Like, you need to hear this, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, the loudness function's on.
Yeah.
And it, in low listening levels, it just makes everything sound right.
Yeah, so if you're someone who listens to music at low levels and sometimes likes to crank it up, then that loudness setting is actually extremely useful. And I do that sometimes. I love to crank up music, but I listen to music at low levels at night. How else would I listen, for so long, right?
Yeah.
I have neighbors as well. So, yeah, that's really good for that. But just as a standalone $3,000 DAC and preamplifier combination, the preamplifier section is quite good on this unit. And aside from that, it's a very good headphone amplifier, and you can power two at the same time. So this is really good for like desktop warriors. Like I would get this for my desktop.
It's like the tinkerer's paradise.
And just the DAC alone for hi-fi systems, you have that loudness setting, you have EQ functionality, you have bass boost, treble boost, and it's just a very good DAC to just out of the box. It sounds good, detailed, great resolution, measures great if that matters to you. But it is also very adjustable to your system if you are looking for something like that around like $3,000.
We can just adjust the treble and bass so easily. Even when we were using two headphones, we had independent EQ.
And depending on this, one of the complaints that a lot of people have with the RME is that they find it digital sounding. I did not find that whatsoever. I think it really depends on the system that you have running. And also, if you do find it digital, which I didn't at all, then you can also complement, I think, with a tube preamplifier or a tube amplifier, something like that to make it more analog.
If I were to describe it in one word, it's so clean.
Yes.
Like, absolutely clean. No matter what volume level, it was just consistent.
Yeah, but not bright. It's clean sounding, and the background is black. You notice it. It's very noticeable, but it's not bright. And I kind of liked the RME more than the May at times, especially in the bass region. You mentioned how tactile it was, and that was noticeable. Like if you never heard a difference with a DAC before, compare May to a RME if possible, of course. And honestly, the bass is the first thing that you notice. You're like, oh, the bass is more. The second thing you notice is, oh, it's more tactile, and it's it's very May is more smooth in the mid range, like you said, but the RME is more detailed.
And then the SMSL is just a bit more exciting.
Yeah.
Which can come off a little bit fatiguing at higher levels.
Yeah.
And if you're using an internal preamp, well.
Yeah, RME is just more refined in the treble compared to VMV. VMV is a little bit unrefined, but for the price, it's an incredible DAC. That sits somewhere in between the two in terms of sound signature, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much it. And I think that all these DACs are valid choices. It depends on your needs and what you need.
Because some features on the RME, it's how you weigh it. Like some people would kill to just have that screen with the parametric EQ built into the unit.
Yeah, and honestly, even in the pro audio world, that all that feature for $3,000 is kind of unheard of.
It's a bargain.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much it from us, and we'll see you on the next one.